What happens when a billionaire's perfectly crafted web of NDAs meets a woman who knows exactly how to destroy them legally? You're about to witness the most savage corporate takedown in audiobook history. This isn't just revenge, it's a masterclass in turning legal weapons against their creator. Hit subscribe now because this story will change how you see power, contracts, and the women who refuse to stay silent. The shredder is warming up, and his empire is about to feed it. The mahogany conference table stretched like a battlefield between us, its polished surface reflecting the Manhattan skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. Marcus Blackwell adjusted his Hermes tie, a nervous tell I'd learned to recognize during our 18-month affair, as his army of lawyers arranged their weapons, 3 copies of the thickest NDA I'd ever seen. Sophia Chen, his lead counsel, Patricia Marsh, spoke without looking up from her tablet. Former senior partner at Chen & Associates, Harvard Law Review, currently unemployed. Her tone made "unemployed" sound like a terminal disease. I kept my expression neutral, hands folded in my Armani blazer's lap. Currently selective about my next opportunity, Patricia. There's a difference. Marcus finally met my eyes across the table. 6 months ago, those steel-gray eyes had whispered promises about leaving his wife, about building something real together. Now they held the cold calculation of a man protecting his empire. Sophia, let's keep this simple. His voice carried that familiar boardroom authority that once made me weak in the knees. Sign the agreement. Take the settlement. Move forward. I glanced at the document's first page. Confidentiality and Non-Disclosure Agreement, Blackwell Industries. The settlement figure made my breath catch, enough zeros to buy silence and disappearance. 7 figures to never speak about our relationship, I said, voice steady despite the earthquake in my chest. That's generous, Marcus. Almost insulting in its generosity. His jaw tightened. It's more than fair compensation for any inconvenience. Inconvenience. 18 months of stolen weekends, midnight texts, promises about leaving Christina. 18 months of being hidden like a shameful secret while he paraded his socialite wife through charity galas. The NDA covers all interactions between yourself and Mr. Blackwell, Patricia droned. Professional, personal, intimate. Any violation results in immediate litigation and financial penalties exceeding the settlement amount. I picked up the Mont Blanc pen. Even their writing instruments cost more than most people's monthly rent. The weight felt substantial, final. You know what's interesting about NDAs, Patricia? I began signing the first page with deliberate strokes. I've written hundreds of them. Corporate secrets, executive misconduct, hostile takeover negotiations. Marcus relaxed slightly as I moved to page 2. The key to an ironclad NDA, I continued, is ensuring every loophole is sealed. Page 3. Every potential breach scenario covered. Page 4. Every legal technicality anticipated. I reached the signature page and paused, pen hovering over the line. Which is why I'm curious about Section 47B. Patricia's head snapped up. Marcus leaned forward. There's no Section 47B, she said quickly. I smiled and set down the pen. Exactly. There's no Section 47B in this NDA. But there should be. Because Section 47B would cover what happens when the primary party, that's you, Marcus, materially breaches the underlying relationship through acts of fraud, deception, or criminal conduct. The room went dead silent except for the distant hum of Manhattan traffic 40 floors below. Without Section 47B, I continued, standing slowly, this agreement becomes legally void if I can prove you engaged in activities that would constitute breach of fiduciary duty to your shareholders, tax evasion, or... I let the pause hang like a blade, securities fraud. Marcus's face drained of color. You're bluffing. I reached into my Birkin bag, a gift from him after a particularly profitable Blackwell Industries quarter, and withdrew a manila folder. Am I, darling? The folder hit the table with a sound like a gunshot. Inside, photographs, bank statements, email printouts, recorded conversations. 18 months of pillow talk about moving money through shell companies. 18 months of late-night confessions about creative accounting and offshore holdings. 18 months of a billionaire who trusted his mistress with his darkest secrets. You recorded us? His voice cracked like thin ice. I documented everything, Marcus. Every confession about the Singapore accounts. Every admission about the fabricated quarterly reports. Every detail about paying off SEC investigators. I smiled sweetly. Occupational hazard of sleeping with a lawyer. We tend to build cases even in our sleep. Patricia was frantically typing on her tablet, probably trying to calculate legal exposure. Marcus sat frozen, watching his empire crumble in real time. Here's my counteroffer, I said, pulling the unsigned NDA toward me. You have 48 hours to announce your resignation from Blackwell Industries, citing personal reasons. You'll recommend the board promote Janet Morrison to CEO. She's actually qualified, unlike your nepotism hires. You'll quietly transfer 51% of your personal holdings to that charitable foundation Christina's always promoting. I picked up the NDA and tore it in half. The sound echoed like thunder. Or I hold a press conference Tuesday morning and explain to the world exactly how America's favorite tech billionaire has been committing federal crimes while his wife plans charity galas. Marcus lunged forward. You can't do this. I'll destroy you. I'll make sure you never work in this city again. With what? I laughed, gathering my evidence folder. Your reputation? Your connections? By Tuesday, you'll be radioactive. No one will take your calls, Marcus. Trust me, I know exactly how this city works when billionaires fall. I walked toward the door, heels clicking against marble floors like a countdown timer. Sophia! His voice broke with desperation. What do you want? More money. Name your price. I stopped at the door without turning around. I want what you stole from me, Marcus. My voice. My truth. My dignity. I glanced back over my shoulder. And I want to watch you realize that some women can't be bought, silenced, or disappeared. The conference room door closed behind me with the finality of a vault ceiling shut. In 48 hours, Marcus Blackwell would learn the difference between having power and knowing how to use it. The Blackwell Industries stock ticker crawled across every screen in Tommy's bar, Manhattan's favorite watering hole for displaced lawyers and ambitious paralegals. I nursed my second whiskey sour while watching CNBC dissect my former lover's empire in real time. Breaking news. Blackwell Industries shares plummet 15% following CEO Marcus Blackwell's surprise resignation announcement. Another round? Tommy himself appeared at my elbow, Irish accent thick with curiosity. Half of legal Manhattan had been speculating about my sudden disappearance from Chen and Associates 6 months ago. Make it a double. I'm celebrating. On screen, Marcus stood behind a podium at his company's headquarters, looking every inch the humbled billionaire. His resignation statement hit every note I'd scripted. Personal reasons, time for fresh leadership, full support for incoming CEO Janet Morrison. What he didn't mention was the manila envelope I'd hand-delivered to the Securities and Exchange Commission that morning, or the second copy already in the hands of investigative journalist Rachel Torres at the Wall Street Journal. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You destroyed everything. I hope you're satisfied. I typed back, I'm just getting started. The bar's front door chimed, and my blood turned to ice water. Christina Blackwell glided through Tommy's working-class chaos like a swan in a sewage treatment plant, her Chanel suit and perfect blowout drawing stares from every bourbon-soaked attorney in the place. She spotted me immediately and approached with the predatory grace of Manhattan's social elite. Ms. Chen. She slid onto the adjacent barstool uninvited. I believe we need to talk. Up close, Christina Blackwell was even more stunning than her society page photographs suggested. Blonde hair that cost more than most cars, green eyes sharp enough to cut glass, and a smile that could charm the devil into a donation. Mrs. Blackwell. Surprised to see you in Tommy's. Bit down market for your usual haunts. She ordered a martini, top shelf, naturally, and waited until Tommy moved out of earshot. You know, I've always wondered about Marcus's extracurricular activities. A wife notices things. Late nights that weren't actually at the office. Unexplained charges on credit cards I wasn't supposed to see. My whiskey turned to dust in my mouth. If you're looking for details. Oh, I'm not looking for details, darling. I already have them. Christina's smile turned razor-sharp. Private investigators are so thorough these days. I've known about you for over a year. The revelation hit like a physical blow. You knew? Of course I knew. The penthouse apartment on the Upper East Side? I own that building. The weekend trips to Martha's Vineyard? I suggested them. Did you really think Marcus was clever enough to orchestrate an affair without help? My hands trembled as I reached for my drink. Why? Because, my dear, I needed him distracted while I positioned myself for exactly what happened today. Christina sipped her martini with the satisfaction of a chess grandmaster revealing checkmate. Marcus never bothered to read the prenuptial agreement carefully. Community property laws in New York are fascinating when you know how to navigate them. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. The divorce papers. Filed this morning, citing irreconcilable differences and mental distress caused by his public disgrace. I'll retain controlling interest in all family assets, including his Blackwell Industries holdings. She raised her glass in mock toast. Congratulations on making me the richest woman in New York. You used me. The words felt like swallowing glass. Darling, we used each other. You wanted revenge on a man who treated you like a dirty secret. I wanted freedom from a marriage to a criminal who was too arrogant to cover his tracks properly. Christina's green eyes glittered with satisfaction. The difference is that I planned for the aftermath. On the television above us, financial analysts discussed Blackwell Industries' stock recovery under Janet Morrison's leadership. The market loved a female CEO taking over from a disgraced founder. So what now? I asked. Now? Now Marcus discovers that his offshore accounts have been frozen by federal investigators, a tip I provided anonymously, of course. His penthouse is being seized as a criminal asset. His country club memberships are being revoked. Christina checked her phone with bored efficiency. By tomorrow, he'll be persona non grata at every restaurant, club, and social event in Manhattan. She stood and smoothed her skirt, preparing to leave. One more thing, Sophia. That evidence folder you've been carrying around? The one with all those intimate recordings and financial documents. My blood froze. I hope you made copies. Because Marcus's legal team is very creative when it comes to making inconvenient evidence disappear. They'll argue that recordings made without consent are inadmissible. That stolen documents obtained through intimate relationships lack chain of custody. The bar spun around me. You're lying. Am I? Check your apartment when you get home. I think you'll find that someone with a very official search warrant paid you a visit this afternoon. Christina Blackwell walked away like she was floating on air, leaving me drowning in the wreckage of my perfectly planned revenge. My phone buzzed again. This time the text was from Marcus. You wanted to play in the big leagues, Sophia. Welcome to how we actually play. I signaled Tommy for another double whiskey and stared at the TV screen where my former lover's empire continued its transition under new management. Somewhere in Manhattan, Marcus Blackwell was learning what it felt like to lose everything. And I was about to discover that in the world of billionaires and their wives, Even the perfectly executed takedown was just the opening move in a much larger game. My Tribeca apartment looked like a tornado had mated with a paper shredder. Every drawer emptied, every file cabinet ransacked, my home office reduced to scattered debris across hardwood floors. The FBI's search warrant, taped to my refrigerator like a legal scarlet letter, authorized seizure of any and all documents, electronic devices, and recorded materials related to Marcus Blackwell and Blackwell Industries. They'd taken everything. Laptop, phone, backup drives, even my voice recorder from law school. The manila folder that had been my insurance policy now existed only as evidence in a federal investigation where I wasn't the whistleblower, I was the suspect. I sat cross-legged among the wreckage, laptop balanced on my knees as I researched corporate espionage charges on the public library's Wi-Fi. Maximum sentence: 15 years. Asset forfeiture: everything I owned. Career prospects afterward: none. Sophia Chen, corporate attorney turned federal defendant, I muttered to my reflection in the black laptop screen. How's that for a character arc? The apartment buzzer made me jump. I wasn't expecting anyone, hadn't told anyone where I'd been hiding since the FBI raid 3 days ago. Pizza delivery crackled through the ancient intercom. I hadn't ordered pizza. My bare feet made no sound as I crept to the door and peered through the peephole. A young woman in a delivery uniform stood in the hallway, pizza bag balanced on her hip. She looked bored, tired, and completely legitimate. I opened the door with the chain still attached. I didn't order anything. Sophia Chen, apartment 4B? Orders already paid for, including tip. She held up a receipt. Someone called it in about an hour ago. The receipt showed my name, address, and a phone number I didn't recognize. The pizza was paid for with cash, ordered by someone calling themselves a friend. Against my better judgment, I took the chain off and accepted the delivery. As the girl walked away, I noticed she left an envelope tucked under the pizza box. Inside my apartment, I ignored the pizza and tore open the envelope. Sophia, if you're reading this, they've already raided your place. Meet me at the 24-hour diner on Canal Street, booth in the back corner. Come alone. You're not as screwed as you think you are. J.M. Janet Morrison, the new CEO of Blackwell Industries. An hour later, I slid into a cracked vinyl booth across from the woman who'd inherited Marcus's empire. Janet Morrison looked nothing like the polished executive I'd seen on television. No power suit, no perfect makeup, just jeans, a Columbia sweatshirt, and the exhausted expression of someone who'd been running on caffeine and adrenaline for days. You came. She looked surprised. I'm curious how Marcus's replacement knows where I live. Janet signaled the waitress for coffee. Because I've been tracking this situation since before Marcus announced his resignation. You think you're the only one who suspected him of securities fraud. You were investigating him too? For 2 years. Ever since I noticed discrepancies in our quarterly reports that didn't match the internal numbers I was seeing as CFO. Janet's coffee arrived, and she wrapped her hands around the mug like it was a lifeline. The problem was proving it without destroying the company. My brain started connecting dots. You needed someone else to make the accusations. I needed someone with intimate access to his personal dealings. Someone who could document the crimes without being accused of corporate espionage. Janet met my eyes across the table. Someone expendable who'd take the fall if things went wrong. The diner suddenly felt 20 degrees colder. You set me up. I gave you the tools to hang him with. What you did with those tools was your choice. Janet pulled out a tablet and slid it across the table. But I also gave you an insurance policy. The screen showed a video file dated 6 months ago. I hit play and watched myself entering Marcus's private office in the Blackwell Industries building, using a key card Janet had provided for our accidental meeting that day. Security footage from his personal office, Janet explained. "Every confession he made to you, every document he showed you, every crime he admitted to, it's all recorded from multiple angles with professional audio equipment." My mouth fell open. His office was bugged? For 2 years. Every meeting, every phone call, every pillow talk session when he brought women up there. Janet's smile was sharper than a surgical scalpel. "The FBI doesn't have your recordings, Sophia. They have mine. And unlike your evidence, mine has unbreakable chain of custody." "Why didn't you use them before?" "Because I needed him to resign voluntarily. A CEO being arrested for securities fraud crashes stock prices and destroys employee pensions. But a CEO quietly stepping down for personal reasons? The market barely notices, especially when his hand-picked successor is already running day-to-day operations." I stared at the tablet screen, watching Marcus confess to tax evasion in high-definition clarity. "So why are the feds coming after me?" "Because someone convinced them you were the mastermind behind an elaborate blackmail scheme. Someone with enough influence to make federal prosecutors believe that a disgraced former partner was manipulating a poor, innocent billionaire." "Christina." "Bingo. Mrs. Blackwell has been very helpful to the investigation. Explained how you seduced her husband, secretly recorded him, and threatened to destroy his reputation unless he paid you millions." Janet paused her coffee. "Of course, she conveniently forgot to mention that she was feeding you information through me for months." The pieces of the chess game finally became visible. "You all played me. Welcome to corporate America, where everyone plays everyone and the last person standing gets the corner office." Janet finished her coffee and stood. "But here's the thing about being played. Sometimes the game isn't over when you think it is." She dropped a business card on the table. "Janet Morrison, CEO, Blackwell Industries. I'm offering you a job, Sophia. General Counsel. 7 figures, full benefits, stock options that'll make you rich when we go public next year." I stared at her like she'd grown a second head. "You want to hire me? I'm about to be indicted for corporate espionage." "You're about to be exonerated when the real evidence surfaces. Marcus confessed to crimes on video, Christina committed fraud by manipulating federal investigators, and I have documentation of all of it." Janet's smile could have powered Manhattan. "The question is, do you want to keep being a victim, or do you want to help me build the company Marcus was too corrupt and stupid to deserve?" She walked away, leaving me alone in a 24-hour diner with the biggest career decision of my life. Outside the grimy windows, Manhattan glittered like a circuit board, full of power and possibility for those smart enough to grab it. Marcus had treated me like a disposable toy. Christina had used me like a chess piece. But Janet Morrison, Janet was offering me something neither of them understood. She was offering me the chance to win. 6 months later, I stood in my corner office on the 42nd floor of Blackwell Tower, reviewing contracts that would reshape American corporate law. The nameplate on my mahogany desk read, "Sophia Chen, General Counsel and Senior Vice President." The view stretched from Central Park to the Hudson River, a panorama of power that still took my breath away. "The Morrison protocols are ready for implementation," announced David Park, my new Deputy General Counsel, as he entered with a stack of legal documents thicker than a phone book. "Every Fortune 500 company in America is going to want to adopt our corporate transparency standards." The Morrison protocols, Janet's revolutionary approach to executive accountability, mandated real-time financial reporting, recorded board meetings, and automatic SEC filing for any executive decision above $50,000. Wall Street initially screamed bloody murder, but after 6 months of unprecedented profitability under Janet's leadership, they were singing different songs. "Any pushback from the old guard?" I asked, scanning the implementation timeline. "Nothing we can't handle." Although Marcus Blackwell's former associates have been vocal about their opinions. I looked up from the contracts. "What kind of vocal?" David's expression darkened. The kind that involves private investigators following our employees home and suspicious job offers trying to poach our key personnel. 6 months of federal investigation had cleared me of all charges. Janet's security footage made it impossible to prosecute someone who was clearly a victim of manipulation. But Marcus hadn't disappeared quietly into retirement. Using offshore funds the FBI hadn't found yet, he'd been systematically trying to sabotage Blackwell Industries from the shadows. My personal assistant knocked and entered without waiting for permission, a bad habit I'd been trying to break. "Ms. Chen? There's a woman here to see you. Says she doesn't have an appointment but that you'll want to speak with her. I'm booked solid until 6. Take a message. She says her name is Rachel Torres. From the Wall Street Journal." My blood turned to ice water. Rachel Torres was the investigative journalist who'd been digging into the Blackwell scandal for months. The one asking uncomfortable questions about missing evidence and convenient timing of federal raids. "Send her in." Rachel Torres entered my office like she owned it, short, sharp-eyed, with the predatory confidence of someone who'd built her career destroying powerful people's carefully constructed lies. She wore a simple black dress and carried a leather portfolio that probably contained enough evidence to ruin my life. "Ms. Chen. Impressive office. Amazing how quickly things can change when the right people have accidents." I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "Ms. Torres. I assume this isn't a social visit. I'm working on a follow-up piece about the Blackwell Industries scandal. Specifically, I'm interested in the discrepancies between the official narrative and what actually happened. The official narrative is that Marcus Blackwell resigned due to personal reasons, and federal investigators found evidence of securities fraud in his personal dealings. What discrepancies are you seeing?" Rachel opened her portfolio and withdrew a photograph. "This discrepancy." The photo showed me entering the Blackwell Industries building 6 months ago, the same day I'd confronted Marcus with my evidence folder. But this photo was taken from a different angle than the security footage Janet had shown me, and it clearly showed someone else entering the building behind me. Someone in a blonde wig and oversized sunglasses who looked suspiciously like Christina Blackwell. "Interesting timing," Rachel continued. "Mrs. Blackwell claims she was in the Hamptons that day, attending a charity luncheon. But cell phone tower data puts her phone in Manhattan, specifically in the Blackwell Industries building, for 3 hours overlapping with your visit." My mouth went dry. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that Christina Blackwell was present during your confrontation with her husband. I'm suggesting she witnessed his confession and your evidence presentation. And I'm suggesting she immediately contacted federal authorities to frame you as the mastermind while positioning herself as the innocent victim." Rachel placed a second document on my desk, bank statements showing large cash deposits into a private investigator's account, payments authorized by Christina Blackwell's personal trust. "I'm also suggesting that Mrs. Blackwell hired investigators to follow you for months before the scandal broke, building a profile of your activities that she later fed to federal prosecutors." The room was spinning. "You're saying Christina orchestrated the entire thing?" "I'm saying Christina Blackwell played a much larger role than anyone realized. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" Before I could answer, my office door exploded open. Janet Morrison strode in, her face flushed with panic and rage. "Sophia, we have a problem. Marcus just called an emergency press conference. He's claiming he has new evidence that proves." She stopped dead when she saw Rachel Torres. "Shit." Rachel smiled like a shark sensing blood in the water. "Ms. Morrison. Perfect timing. I was just asking Ms. Chen about the role you played in orchestrating Marcus Blackwell's downfall." Janet's face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Really?" "Because I have documentation showing that Blackwell Industries' IT department installed recording equipment in Marcus's private office 8 months before the scandal broke. Equipment that was authorized by the CFO, that would be you, for security purposes." Rachel placed a third document on my desk, internal IT work orders with Janet's digital signature. I also have testimony from former Blackwell employees that you were actively cultivating relationships with Marcus's romantic interests, providing them with access cards and scheduling information about his private meetings. My hands started trembling. Janet, it's not what it looks like. It looks like conspiracy to commit corporate espionage, Rachel interrupted. It looks like you used Ms. Chen as an unwitting accomplice in a complex scheme to remove your boss and position yourself for his job. The walls of my corner office felt like they were closing in. Everything I'd built, every victory I'd achieved, every moment of triumph over the past 6 months, all of it built on lies within lies within lies. My phone buzzed with an emergency news alert. Breaking. Former Blackwell Industries CEO claims corporate conspiracy, demands federal investigation into successor's rise to power. On my computer screen, Marcus Blackwell stood behind a podium, his face gaunt but his eyes burning with the intensity of a man with nothing left to lose. 6 months ago, I was forced from my own company by an elaborate conspiracy involving my former CFO, Janet Morrison, my estranged wife Christina, and a corrupt federal investigation. His voice echoed from the live stream. Today, I'm presenting evidence that will prove how these individuals destroyed my life, stole my company, and manipulated the justice system to cover their crimes. Rachel Torres gathered her documents with the satisfaction of a woman who'd just won the journalism lottery. Ladies, I suggest you both hire very good lawyers. Because Marcus Blackwell just declared war, and he's got nothing left to lose. As she walked out of my office, I realized that my carefully rebuilt life was about to explode for the second time in a year. And this time, I wasn't sure who the real enemy was. The federal courthouse steps buzzed with reporters, protesters, and curiosity seekers as I pushed through the crowd toward the main entrance. 3 months of investigations had led to this moment. United States versus Morrison, Blackwell, and Chen, a case that would either vindicate us or destroy what remained of our lives. Marcus stood across the plaza surrounded by his legal team, looking like a man who'd clawed his way back from the grave. 3 months in federal custody had stripped away his corporate polish, leaving something raw and more dangerous. When our eyes met through the chaos, his smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "Ready for this?" Janet appeared at my elbow, her own legal team flanking us like Secret Service agents. The past 3 months had aged her 5 years, but there was steel in her voice that hadn't been there before. Does anyone ever feel ready to have their entire life dissected in federal court? Inside, the courtroom was packed beyond capacity. Christina Blackwell sat in the front row of the gallery, her blonde hair perfect and her expression unreadable behind designer sunglasses. Rachel Torres had claimed the press section, notebook ready to document whatever carnage was about to unfold. Judge Patricia Hernandez called the court to order with the authority of someone who'd presided over corporate scandals that had toppled governments. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are here to determine whether the defendants conspired to commit securities fraud, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to manipulate federal investigations. Mr. Patterson, you may begin." Federal Prosecutor James Patterson rose like an avenging angel, his opening statement painting us as criminal masterminds who'd orchestrated the most sophisticated corporate conspiracy in American history. The evidence will show that Janet Morrison spent 2 years planning to overthrow Marcus Blackwell, using corporate resources to spy on her own CEO. That Sophia Chen willingly participated in industrial espionage, recording confidential conversations and stealing proprietary documents. And that both defendants manipulated federal investigations to frame an innocent man for their own crimes. My hands clenched in my lap. Every word was technically true but stripped of context that would explain our motivations. When our defense attorney, Miranda Santos, stood for her opening statement, her voice cut through the courtroom like a blade. "The prosecution wants you to believe that my clients are criminal conspirators. The evidence will show they are whistleblowers who exposed the largest securities fraud in New York corporate history. Marcus Blackwell stole millions from his own shareholders while manipulating federal regulators. My clients didn't destroy his career, they saved thousands of investors from financial ruin. The first day of testimony focused on Marcus's financial crimes. FBI forensic accountants walked the jury through shell companies, offshore accounts, and fabricated quarterly reports. By lunch break, even Marcus's lawyers looked uncomfortable. But the second day belonged to the prosecution. Call Christina Blackwell to the stand. Marcus's estranged wife glided to the witness box like she was walking a red carpet, her testimony delivered with the polish of someone who'd rehearsed every word. "My husband was a good man who made mistakes," she told the jury, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. "But he was manipulated by women who wanted to destroy him for personal gain. She painted me as a seductress who'd used intimacy to steal corporate secrets, Janet as an ambitious subordinate willing to destroy her boss for power." Her testimony was devastating, precise, and completely believable. During cross-examination, Miranda attacked her credibility with surgical precision. "Mrs. Blackwell, isn't it true that you hired private investigators to follow Ms. Chen for 8 months before the scandal broke?" "I was concerned about my marriage." "Isn't it true that you met secretly with federal prosecutors before they raided Ms. Chen's apartment?" "I was cooperating with their investigation." "Isn't it true that you filed for divorce and stand to inherit controlling interest in your husband's assets if he's convicted of federal crimes?" Christina's perfect composure cracked slightly. "That's not why." No further questions. The third day brought Marcus himself to the witness stand. His testimony was a masterclass in manipulation, painting himself as a victim of corporate betrayal and feminine wiles. "I trusted Janet Morrison with my company's most sensitive information," he told the jury. "I trusted Sophia Chen with my heart. They used that trust to destroy everything I'd built." When Miranda cross-examined him, she was merciless. "Mr. Blackwell, did you or did you not maintain offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands without declaring them to the SEC?" "I refuse to answer on the grounds." "Did you or did you not fabricate quarterly earnings reports to inflate your company's stock price?" "I refuse to answer." "Did you or did you not confess to securities fraud during recorded conversations with Ms. Chen?" Marcus's face turned red. "Those recordings were made without my consent." "But were they accurate? Did you make those confessions?" "I was manipulated. She seduced me into." "Mr. Blackwell, did you make those confessions? Yes or no?" For 10 seconds, the courtroom was silent except for the hum of air conditioning and the scratch of reporters' pens. "Yes," Marcus finally whispered. Miranda smiled. No further questions. On the fourth day, I took the stand. Testifying in federal court about the most intimate details of your life is like performing surgery on yourself without anesthesia. I walked the jury through 18 months of secret meetings, stolen weekends, and gradually discovering the man I loved was a criminal. Why didn't you go to authorities immediately when you learned about Mr. Blackwell's crimes? Prosecutor Patterson asked during cross-examination. "Because I loved him. Because I hoped he would stop. Because I was afraid no one would believe the word of a mistress against a billionaire." "So you decided to take justice into your own hands?" "I decided to document the truth. What others did with that truth was their choice." The final day brought Janet's testimony. She owned her role in recording Marcus's office, her cultivation of his romantic interests, her systematic collection of evidence. "I spent 2 years watching Marcus Blackwell steal from shareholders, manipulate regulators, and commit federal crimes," she told the jury. "I had a responsibility to protect the company and its employees from his criminality." "Even if it meant destroying his life?" Patterson asked. "Even if it meant saving thousands of others." During closing arguments, the prosecution portrayed us as scheming criminals who'd weaponized femininity against an innocent man. Our defense painted us as corporate heroes who'd sacrificed everything to expose corruption. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, Judge Hernandez's voice echoed through the packed courtroom. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" "We have, Your Honor." "On the charge of conspiracy to commit securities fraud, how do you find the defendants Janet Morrison and Sophia Chen?" My heart stopped beating. "Not guilty." The courtroom exploded. Reporters rushed for exits, spectators shouted questions, cameras flashed like lightning. Through the chaos, I saw Marcus collapse into his chair, his face gray with defeat. But Judge Hernandez wasn't finished. However, the court finds sufficient evidence to warrant further investigation into the conduct of Marcus Blackwell and Christina Blackwell regarding potential obstruction of justice and conspiracy to manipulate federal investigations. The gavel's bang cut through the courtroom chaos like a gunshot. Christina Blackwell's perfect composure finally shattered completely. She stood abruptly, knocking over her designer handbag, and rushed toward the exit as federal marshals moved to intercept her. Marcus sat frozen at the defense table, watching his carefully constructed revenge plan collapse in real time. Outside the courthouse, Janet and I stood on the steps as reporters shouted questions and camera flashes turned the late afternoon into artificial daylight. "Ms. Chen, how does it feel to be vindicated? Ms. Morrison, will you be returning to Blackwell Industries? What's your response to Marcus Blackwell's claims that this was all orchestrated?" Miranda Santos stepped to the microphone cluster with the confidence of someone who just won the legal lottery. Today, justice was served. My clients were whistleblowers who risked everything to expose corporate corruption. The real criminals, Marcus and Christina Blackwell, will now face the full weight of federal investigation for their attempts to obstruct justice and manipulate the legal system. As we pushed through the crowd toward our waiting car, I caught sight of Rachel Torres interviewing Christina's abandoned legal team. The journalist's smile suggested she had enough material for a Pulitzer Prize-winning series. "It's over," Janet said as our car pulled away from the courthouse. "It's actually over." But I was watching Marcus Blackwell through the rear window, standing alone on the courthouse steps as his lawyers packed up their briefcases and walked away. His empire was gone, his wife had betrayed him, and his revenge had backfired spectacularly. He looked like a man with nothing left to lose, which, in my experience, was the most dangerous kind of man. "No," I said quietly. "I don't think it is." The penthouse office of Chen Legal Strategies occupied the entire 52nd floor of a gleaming Manhattan tower, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view that made my old corner office at Blackwell Industries look like a broom closet. The nameplate on my desk read simply, "Sophia Chen, Founder and CEO." No need for lengthy titles when you own the entire company. "The Morrison account alone is worth $12 million this quarter," announced Sarah Kim, my managing partner, as she entered with our monthly revenue reports. "Every Fortune 500 company in America wants Chen Legal to design their corporate transparency protocols." I smiled, signing acquisition papers for our 4th satellite office. "And the Blackwell situation?" "Federal prison. Minimum security. Marcus got 8 years for securities fraud, tax evasion, and obstruction of justice. Christina got 5 years for conspiracy and perjury. Both are appealing, but their legal team says it's mostly for show." 2 years of building Chen Legal from scratch had transformed me from a scandal-damaged attorney into the most sought-after corporate consultant in America. The Morrison Protocols, my revolutionary approach to executive accountability, had become the gold standard for corporate governance. Companies paid millions for my expertise in creating transparent, scandal-proof business structures. My assistant knocked and entered. "Ms. Chen? There's someone here to see you. Says he doesn't have an appointment but that you know him." My blood chilled. "Who is it?" "Marcus Blackwell. He's been released pending his appeal." The pen slipped from my fingers. Marcus had been denied bail, sentenced to 8 years without possibility of early release. There was no legal mechanism for him to be walking free. "Send him in." Marcus Blackwell entered my office like a ghost returning from the grave. 2 years in federal custody had stripped away every trace of the polished billionaire I'd once loved. His hair was gray, his expensive suits replaced by cheap department store clothes. But his eyes, those steel-gray eyes, still burned with the intensity that had once made me weak in the knees. "Hello, Sophia. Impressive office. Amazing how quickly fortunes can change." I gestured to the chair across from my desk, keeping my voice steady despite the earthquake in my chest. "Marcus, I thought you were in federal prison. Medical release pending appeal. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, 6 months to live." He sat down slowly, moving like a man whose body was betraying him. Gives a person perspective about what really matters. If you're looking for sympathy. I'm looking for closure. Marcus placed a manila envelope on my desk. "This contains documentation that will exonerate Christina of all federal charges. Proof that I manipulated her testimony, threatened her family, and forced her to lie to federal investigators." I stared at the envelope like it was a live bomb. "Why?" "Because she's the mother of my children. Because she deserves better than being remembered as a criminal conspirator." Marcus's voice cracked slightly. "Because some mistakes can't be undone, but some can be forgiven." "And what do you want in return?" "Nothing. This isn't a negotiation, Sophia. This is an apology." He stood slowly, his movement careful and deliberate. "I destroyed everything good in my life because I couldn't accept that a woman could be smarter, stronger, and more moral than me. I lost my company, my family, and my freedom because I underestimated the women who surrounded me." Marcus walked to the window overlooking Manhattan, his reflection ghost-like in the glass. "You know what the real irony is? You would have been the best thing that ever happened to me. But I was too arrogant, too insecure, and too stupid to recognize it." When he turned back to face me, I saw something I'd never seen before in Marcus Blackwell's eyes: genuine remorse. "I'm dying, Sophia. In 6 months, none of this will matter. But you're going to live for decades, build an empire, change how business works in America." He paused at my office door. "I wanted to tell you, before it's too late, that I'm proud of what you've become. And I'm sorry for what I put you through." After he left, I sat alone in my penthouse office, Manhattan glittering like a circuit board through the windows. The manila envelope remained unopened on my desk, evidence that could free Christina Blackwell and close the final chapter of a scandal that had defined my adult life. My phone buzzed with a text from Janet Morrison, now running Blackwell Industries as the most successful female CEO in tech history. "Board meeting tomorrow. Ready to discuss that merger." I looked around my empire, 52 floors of success built from the ashes of betrayal and revenge. Chen Legal Strategies employed 300 attorneys, consulted for half the Fortune 500, and had fundamentally changed how American corporations approach transparency and accountability. I'd wanted revenge against Marcus Blackwell. Instead, I'd gotten something infinitely more valuable. I'd gotten power. Real power. The kind that couldn't be taken away by NDAs, manipulated by billionaires' wives, or destroyed by federal investigations. The power to build something lasting, something meaningful, something mine. I opened the manila envelope and began reading Christina's exoneration documents. Some chains needed to be broken, even for people who'd tried to destroy you. After all, I was Sophia Chen now. Not Marcus's mistress, not Christina's pawn, not Janet's unwitting accomplice. I was the woman who'd shredded a billionaire's NDA and built an empire from the pieces. And that was a story worth telling. Fire, that's how you turn betrayal into billions. Fire. Sophia didn't just get revenge. She got everything. While Marcus rotted in prison and Christina faced federal charges, our girl built a legal empire that changed American business forever. The lesson? When powerful men try to silence you with NDAs and legal threats, sometimes the best response isn't to fight their system. It's to build a better one. Hit that subscribe button if you believe women can turn their darkest moments into their greatest triumphs. Share this story with every woman who's been underestimated, silenced, or betrayed by someone who thought they could buy her silence. What would you do if handed a billionaire's NDA? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. Remember, they can shred your contracts, but they can't shred your worth. Flexed biceps.